This is the Nile, 7,000 kilometers, give or take, and I'm about to take you along every single kilometer of it, using an interactive map you can open right now on another screen. Links in the description. From mountain streams in Rwanda, through one of the most powerful waterfalls on Earth, a swamp bigger than South Korea, and to the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Let's go. Geographically, the Nile's epic story begins long before it reaches Lake Victoria. Covering 11 countries and spanning over 3.3 million square kilometers, nearly a tenth of the entire African continent, this massive drainage basin collects mountain rain from thousands of streams. Now, geographers have long treated Lake Victoria itself as the Nile's source. Measured that way, the river runs about 5,500 kilometers and comfortably loses the title of longest river on Earth to the Amazon. But push past the lake into the Kagera and its Rwandan and Burundian headwaters, and the Nile suddenly re-enters the race. That's the length most textbooks cite, around 6,650 kilometers. Brazilian satellite surveys put the two rivers even closer together, the Nile at 6,852 kilometers, the Amazon at 6,992, just 140 kilometers apart. And the most recent centerline mapping, published in 2009, stretches the Nile even further, to just over 7,000 kilometers. 3 studies, 3 different numbers, and geographers still haven't agreed on a winner. What's certain is this: without the Kagera, there's no debate at all. Here, the Kagera River carries the ultimate headwaters directly into Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake on the planet. Crossing this massive inland sea, the river emerges at Giza, Uganda, officially beginning its long northward march as the White Nile. In northern Uganda, the river encounters one of its most violent obstacles: Murchison Falls. This place has actually carried 2 names. British explorer Samuel Baker named it Murchison Falls back in 1864 after the president of the Royal Geographical Society. A century later, Idi Amin renamed it Kabalega Falls, honoring a local king. And even today, you'll hear both names used interchangeably. Take a look at the falls from above. This exact panoramic shot is included in our presentation, so you can go explore it in full resolution yourself. Look closely, and you'll see exactly how dramatic this squeeze really is. The river arrives here nearly 50 meters wide, and these rock walls crush it down to less than 10 meters before it even reaches the edge. Here, the entire volume of the Nile leaving Lake Victoria, around 300 cubic meters of water every single second, is forced through that gap, before plunging 43 meters into a surging abyss below. Below the falls, the water slows into a wide, calm pool, feeding the surrounding national park, home to hippos, crocodiles, and some of the densest crocodile populations found anywhere in Africa. Leaving Uganda behind, we enter South Sudan, where the river transforms into the Sudd, one of the largest freshwater wetlands in the world. Its size is almost impossible to pin down. In the dry season, it shrinks to around 30,000 square kilometers. But during the wet season, it explodes outward to over 130,000, an area bigger than all of Greece. And here's the real number that matters. Crossing this flat, sprawling swamp, the Nile loses roughly half its entire volume, swallowed up by evaporation before it can continue north. This vast natural sponge provides sanctuary for millions of migratory birds and wildlife, so dense that for centuries it completely blocked human navigation up the Nile. From the Sudd's flooded plains, we climb again, this time to trace a very different vein of the Nile system. Moving north into Sudan, the White Nile meets its powerful sibling, the Blue Nile, which originates from Lake Tana, Ethiopia's largest lake, high in the northern highlands. Just downstream from the lake, the river throws itself over Tis Isat Falls, the Great Smoke as locals call it, a 45-meter curtain of water that's carved this landscape for centuries. And here's the twist. Despite being the shorter of the two rivers, the Blue Nile is the real muscle behind the Nile's flow. On average, it supplies around 60% of all the water reaching Egypt. But during the summer flood season, that number surges to over 80%. For thousands of years, it was this very surge that flooded the Nile Valley every year and gave birth to ancient Egypt itself. Upstream on the Blue Nile stands the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the largest hydroelectric project in Africa and a center of vital geopolitical importance. In the capital city of Khartoum, the light gray waters of the White Nile merge with the dark, silt-heavy waters of the Blue Nile, forming the single, united river that will brave the Sahara Desert. As the Nile crosses into Egypt, it expands into Lake Nasser, one of the largest artificial reservoirs on Earth, stretching more than 500 kilometers back into Sudan. It exists because of the Aswan High Dam, completed in 1970. For millennia, Egypt's fate depended entirely on whether the Nile's annual flood was too little or too much. This dam finally gave Egypt control over that flood, generating electricity and guaranteeing water for irrigation year-round. Right here in our presentation, these two markers show you exactly where the Temple of Abu Simbel stood before and where it stands now, just 200 meters apart and 65 meters higher. That's because taming the Nile came at a cost. Filling this reservoir meant flooding ancient Nubian homelands and threatening to drown Abu Simbel, carved directly into the cliffs over 3,000 years ago by Pharaoh Ramses II, beneath the rising water completely. Between 1964 and 1968, in one of the first great international rescue efforts of its kind, engineers under UNESCO cut the entire complex into more than 1,000 blocks and reassembled it piece by piece, moving it to the site you see today. Over 50 countries helped fund the operation, a global answer to a distinctly Egyptian challenge. Flowing through central Egypt, the Nile creates a stark, beautiful contrast, a razor-thin ribbon of vibrant green life cutting through barren desert sands. That ribbon is almost everything. Even today, some 95% of all Egyptians live packed onto just 4 or 5% of the country's land, right along this river. People have depended on that ribbon here for thousands of years, and Luxor, the ancient city of Thebes, stands as one of the oldest witnesses to that relationship. The Egyptians even built the city around the sun's path across it. On the east bank, where the sun rises, the towering columns of Karnak honored the living and their gods. On the west bank, where the sun sets, hidden within dry desert canyons, lies the Valley of the Kings, the final resting place of Tutankhamun and Egypt's greatest pharaohs. From Karnak, we follow the river itself north, the same lifeline that sustained everything along its banks for thousands of years. Every year, the Nile's floods used to leave behind a fresh layer of black, fertile soil, the very reason a civilization capable of building temples like the ones behind us could exist here at all. That lifeline leads straight into Cairo, a sprawling metropolis of over 20 million people, one of the largest and densest cities on the planet. And right at its edge, where the city finally gives way to the desert, stand human history's most iconic monuments, the Great Pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx, now joined by the newly opened Grand Egyptian Museum. 4,500 years separate these two skylines, ancient limestone and modern glass and steel, but they're facing the exact same challenge Egypt has always faced: too many people, too little livable land. It's why the government is now building an entirely new capital in the desert east of Cairo, an attempt to do in the 21st century what the pyramids builders never had to imagine. North of Cairo, the Nile fans out into the famous Nile Delta, a vast, fertile triangle. In fact, it's the reason the word delta exists at all. Ancient Greek geographers thought the shape looked exactly like their letter delta, and the name simply stuck. Splitting into two main branches, the Rosetta and the Damietta, the river completes an epic journey of somewhere around 7,000 kilometers, emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. But this ending isn't quite as stable as it looks. Remember that dam we saw back in Aswan? By holding back the Nile's floods, it also holds back the silt that used to rebuild this delta every single year. Without fresh sediment arriving, the coastline is now eroding, and the delta is slowly losing ground to the sea it once helped create. Don't forget, you can explore every single stop on this trip yourself using our Google Earth presentation link in the description below. If you enjoyed this 3D journey, subscribe to the channel for more geographical explorations. What geographical journey would you like to see next on our channel? Drop your ideas in the comments below, and we will gladly prepare it for you. Until next time,